Okay, the sound is probably going to be terrible because I don't feel like digging around to find a mic that's not dead. You might hear cats meowing, that's my life. I've been on hiatus, I'm still on hiatus, but I got mad about something. Now, there's been a lot of topics that I have felt very passionate about that I have wanted to make into videos, and those have gone on my backlog. I'm on hiatus because I'm working on a whole bunch of big projects to release eventually. But this one is the exception because one, it's very timely and information is changing pretty quickly, so putting it out sometime later this year probably wouldn't do much good. Two, this is something that I, in a rare occasion, actually don't want to research and make a long-form video about. I actually would rather just not look at it too directly and not research it and just say my thoughts and move on. And three, I guess I'm so upset by the way that so many people are responding to this thing that I feel like even though I have a very small audience, I have to put how I feel about it in the open in some way. So that's this. I'm also going to keep things very vague, mainly for my own well-being, because like I said, I don't want to look too directly at this thing, because I find it very upsetting, but still extremely important to acknowledge and address. And also because, like, yes, this is kind of about a specific political scandal that's going on. I don't even want to call it political scandal. Human rights violation, really. A specific thing that's going on right now, but it also, in general, can apply to a lot of things as well. I hate it when there is a very real, horrible thing going on, or has gone on and is being brought to light and investigated, and people make up sensationalized stories instead of getting rightfully angry about the actual real horrible things that have happened and the actual people that have really been hurt. I see a sort of dichotomy going on with people responding to the victims of this horrible thing, and what the victims have, like, said. Again, I haven't looked too much into this intentionally. I'm not claiming to be an expert on it in any way. There's a lot that I don't know and don't want to know. I'm just going off of what information I do know, have learned, some that I didn't even want to know, but I know just because I'm on the internet too much, and the responses from people that I have seen. So don't assume that I know all the facts. I do not. And I'm openly admitting that. I've been seeing a lot of people respond to the things that victims have said with the very black and white, either these people are crazy, they're just doing drugs, and they're either intentionally making stuff up, or they're going on crazy trips and just making up nonsense. We can't trust anything that they say because it all sounds so insane. Or everything that they say is 100% true, exactly how it happened. This is a word-by-word perfect recounting of everything that has happened. And to question even one sentence of it is to not believe anything. And the truth lies somewhere in the middle, in my opinion. The stories that we have heard, there are some crazy things in there. And things that I find strikingly similar to, like, satanic panic, cult shit. You know, the eating babies and all this crazy stuff. And some of that gets into some weird baggage with elite and all that. I'm not touching that, but if you know, you know. This sounds horrible, but to put it bluntly, in this situation, and in a lot of other situations, a lot of people want, and they don't even realize that this is what they want, but collective, in a collective cultural sense, a lot of times people want the worst option. to be true. Because there's a point where the things get so insanely bad that it feels separate from us. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like we're connected to that world, that society, those people at all. That we're just completely separated from them. And also it's salacious, it's sensationalized, it's exciting. Humans have always been like this. That's why, you know, public executions were a thing for so long, and why whenever there was especially back in the day, whenever there was a big disaster, like, part of the biggest challenge of rescue and cleanup was just keeping the crowds away who wanted to watch. And the only reason that's not as much of a problem now is because now we can just watch everything on the internet. When there's options of things that are horrible but are just real and people can connect to in some way, that's just depressing. That just makes us confront a lot of things that we don't want to think about. But then there's the option of something that is so bad and so terrible that it's Hollywood, and you can just watch it like it's fiction. You don't have to confront that as much. It doesn't have to affect you as much. Even if you fully believe that it's true, for a lot of people there is still that separation and excitement, honestly. So going back to that dichotomy, you know, there's the people that want to believe the craziest stories that have come out of this situation, that there's sacrifices and eating kids, eating babies, cannibalism, all the craziest stuff you can possibly imagine. There's people that want to believe that, for all the reasons I talked about. And then there's people on the other side that say that nothing with these crazy people is true. Because, oh, they have a mental illness. Oh, they have substance abuse issues. So you can't trust anything that they say. And I really do not agree with either of those takes. Again, I'm no expert. Far from it. I know very little about this situation on purpose. In my uneducated opinion, for whatever it's worth, is that going through trauma really messes you up. And things like PTSD go hand in hand with substance abuse disorder. This is scientifically known, because for a lot of people, that's the only way that you're able to get through life after what's been done. You know, obviously, plenty of other mental illnesses go along with that, with going through horrible traumas, especially at a young age. There is a lot of danger in saying things like, these people can't be trusted or believed for anything that they say. I think most people know that now, especially after the, Me Too movement and all that stuff. I think a lot of people know now how important it is to believe victims and not just outright dismiss people. And there's also the other side of this, that all of these things with trauma, other mental illness, substance abuse, all of it, it messes with your brain in ways that you can lose or scramble memories, especially if you were younger when bad things happened to you. Even if no substances are involved, just the trauma and other mental illness that goes along with it, or maybe that you already had or whatever, all that alone can scramble up your memories real good. And it's distressing when you can't even really piece together your own past. And again, in my opinion, I don't think it's coincidence that a lot of the more outlandish stories and claims do line up perfectly with stories from Satanic Panic and a lot of things that we see in media. It is kind of how the brain works, especially a brain that's not doing so great. There's gaps. You're afraid. You're confused. You don't know your own life. Those gaps can get filled in with whatever. And not saying that you do it intentionally. Not at all. It's pretty much all unintentional, all subconscious stuff. But you really want that gap to be filled. And maybe that gap does get filled but it happens to be a fictional story you heard, something you saw in a movie. But you don't know that. It all gets mixed up. It all gets confused. I'm not trying to compare myself or anything in my life to anywhere even close to what is coming out about what's happened. But just to use an example, like, there have been times where I have had to suss out what are things that actually happened and what are things that I experienced in very realistic nightmares and episodes of sleep paralysis. And there are plenty of things that I have discovered, I thought were real, but it was actually a nightmare that I probably had as a kid because it doesn't match up with anything else. But for the longest time, I was like, I don't see how this couldn't be real. It feels like it's something that happened to me. But it's just that my brain programmed it wrong somehow, categorized it in the wrong folder. Like I said, that's a very different kind of thing and not nearly as bad. Not even in the same realm, but I'm just trying to use an example of what I'm talking about here. And to show that, like, things getting miscategorized as memories is a very real thing that happens probably pretty commonly, more so than we think. And with this level of trauma and of just brokenness that people are going through, no wonder that the things that get filed under memories, even if they're not really memories, are pretty extreme, because their actual memories are very extreme. And once again, I feel like I have to keep putting disclaimers in here, especially because if anyone comes along like, I told you so, or you're stupid, you're wrong, doubt it, but whatever, getting out in front of it just in case. I know that I don't know a lot about this situation, and I could very easily be wrong about a lot of the things I'm saying. Maybe all the most extreme things that have been said, maybe that is all true, I don't know. At this point, with how crazy things have been, I don't know that I would even be that surprised by anything anymore. But, I mean, Occam's razor, I really do feel it comes down to people wanting a more exciting story. And something that is so bad that they can completely separate themselves from it. It's just a movie, basically. You can't even comprehend things as bad as cannibalism and all the crazy sacrifice stuff they've talked about. It's not real. Air quotes. It's not real to people. The things that we're pretty sure have happened are more grounded in reality. They are real. And there's a lot of other aspects that I've kind of read about and heard about of things, of people talking about and responding to the situation in ways that kind of say a lot. But it's things that I don't know a whole lot about at all. So I don't want to get too much into it. I've seen people saying that, like, either the victims for sure are, or are most likely, again, I don't know a lot, they're teenagers. Young teenagers. Like, under 15, from what I understand. Which aligns with things that I am also aware of and know about. And yeah, the victims of trafficking are usually between the ages of, like, 9 and 14. I'm not sure if those numbers are the exact right statistic. I haven't looked it up or anything, but it's somewhere around there. And that also, many of these victims were probably part of marginalized groups. Immigrants, people of color, very poor people. Which again, is usually how trafficking happens. But people don't really bring attention to those things. There's this other picture painted of people that are much younger being victims from different social statuses, we'll say. I think there is an element of, the younger the victims, the worse it is, and that gets back to the whole salacious thing. But there's also I think there's unfortunately a lot of people that would be horrified if this happened to a 5-year-old white kid. But a 15-year-old black person, they probably find a way to blame the victim just because of biases, racism. I don't think it's accidental or coincidental that I have kept a distance from this whole goings on and only very recently learned the actual age of the victims. Because of how people are talking about it, what people are saying, people are, drumming up the story of very small kids, babies, all that. And when I saw that it's actually teenage girls from marginalized groups, I was like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense that those are the people that would be targeted with this kind of thing, and that's not the story that people are telling. People aren't as widely talking about the fact that it's teenagers, because that's not the story people want. People aren't as widely talking about the victims being from marginalized groups, because that's not the story people want. They aren't talking about the victims usually having to turn to substance abuse to deal with what has been or is being done to them, because that's not the story people want. The story people want are victims that they can see as perfectly innocent and faultless and blameless, as little, let's face it, white, middle class, maybe even rich kids that are just like perfect little angels with no complexities at all. They don't want to feel bad for someone who does drugs, or bad for someone who would potentially do sex work willingly in another context. They don't want to feel bad for those people. Most likely, the truth is that horrible human beings hurt and abused other vulnerable human beings because they could. And the victims that got away now have to find a way to live. And that's it.